Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I am doing a review for the Scorpio races by Maggie Stiefvater. So this is a dual perspective story that follows our two main characters, Puck and Sean. On the island where they live, there are magical horses that come out of the ocean every November. And magical horses may sound like a nice thing, but these are horses that eat people. So they're extremely dangerous. But the horses can also be caught and trained to be able to be ridden, and the people of the island do that so that every year in November they can have the Scorpio races. So these are extremely dangerous races in which they ride these magical horses along the beach, and whoever wins an incredible amount of money. Both of our main characters are participating in these races. They also have both lost members of their families to this race. One of the characters is Puck. She and her brothers are living on this island, and she is entering the race to try and support her family and to keep her family together because they are out of money and it threatens to pull their family apart. Our other character, Sean, is racing to win the freedom that he desires and to win the life that he wants. So they both have things that are motivating them to be in these races, and they are both racing for causes that are close to their hearts. Also, Puck happens to be the first girl who has ever been in the Scorpio races, and that creates some pushback for her as well. This book has a very different setting and vibe than a lot of Maggie Stiefvater's other books because it takes place on this island, which is a very harsh environment, both because of just the landscape itself and also because there are deadly, like, man-eating horses that show up on their shores every year. So it's a very harsh environment that these people are living in. Going into this, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to think of it because the horses seemed like they were going to be a very large part of the story, and I'm not really a horse person. And the horses were very integral to the story, and it took me a little while to get into like being interested in the horses at all. But Maggie Stiefvater does have a way of kind of endearing characters and things to you. In her other series, The Raven Cycle, there's a lot of stuff about cars, and I'm not a car person either, and yet I still was interested in the parts about cars. But so in this, for the first part of the book, I was not that interested in the horses, but then by the end I was much more invested in at least specific horses that, you know, were involved in the story and were meaningful to the characters. And that's kind of the feeling that I had throughout the book, that the first 2/3 of the book I was not that into it. I was not very invested in the characters or the storyline. It felt like the main perspectives that we were reading from were very individual. They were very much in their own heads and kind of just going parallel to each other, but there wasn't a lot of interaction. I just didn't feel as connected to or endeared to the characters, and I think part of that is because there was a lot of just them in their own minds and not as much of them in relation to other people, and that made it a little more difficult for me to connect to the characters. In the last third of the book, though, we got more of that character interaction, more relationship building, and then I became more invested in the characters and in the horses as well. In that last third, they also raised the stakes for the characters. Now, the stakes were pretty high to begin with, for Puck especially, that she was trying to really keep her family together with winning this race, and that they are preparing for this extremely deadly race. But it is in that second third, I guess, where the stakes are really raised for the character Sean. So then the story feels much more urgent from both perspectives and not just the one. As with most of Maggie Stiefvater's books, there is also a romance in this story, but again, it is a very Maggie Stiefvater kind of romance. That is very like subtle, slow burn, a lot of like eye contact and longing, or like freaking out when like your hands touched and then they think about it for the next like week and they're just like, oh my god, our hands touched. And I enjoy those innocent, slow burn kind of romances where the slightest look or touch sends them spiraling into their infatuation. So I did enjoy that part of the story as well. That's one of the things that always endears Maggie Stiefvater's books and characters to me, is just the sweetness of their relationships. This book actually, even though I have it in physical copy here, I did listen to the audiobook because at the time, I didn't really have time to be reading the physical book with all the other things I was reading. And in retrospect, I'm not sure if that was a good idea. I think that I may have liked it better if I had read the book in physical copy. I have listened to some of Maggie Stiefvater's other audiobooks and enjoyed them, but this one seems like it would have been more atmospheric if I had read it in physical copy. I actually did read 1 or 2 chapters like from the physical book, and I actually enjoyed them more that way, but since I had already started it in audiobook, I have trouble switching back and forth between them. I usually just pick one format and go with that. So I didn't switch over to reading the physical book because I was already listening to the audiobook. Anyways, this is a book that I would like to revisit sometime in the future. I would like to reread it because I think that I might like it better if I read the physical book itself. Overall, this was not my favorite of Maggie Stiefvater's books. As I said, like the first 2/3 of it, I really didn't care that much, and it wasn't until that last third that I got invested. So I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. The last third did really save it for me, and I also do think, as I said, I would like it better if I read the physical book itself, and I liked it enough that I'm willing to give it another try in the future and reread it again. So it was okay, but it was, as I said, just like 3.5 out of 5 stars. So that is all for my review of the Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. Let me know in the comments if you have read it, what you have thought about it. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!